Hi homesteaders, my name is Melissa with Gillian Homestead, and welcome to my channel where we focus on homesteading skills, self-sufficiency, and resilience. So it's a cold, rainy Friday evening in March, and the granddaughters are coming over tonight. They're not quite ready to be picked up, so I decided to pull together a quick batch of my sourdough donuts, which they've never had, but they are very yummy, and I thought that I would just go ahead and pull some of that together so that we could make donuts together. So I'm going to pull my dough together and let it sit in the fridge and let it rest while I'm waiting on them to be ready. One of them it's spring break for them, and one of them went on a fun outing with their best friend, and they've been gone all day. So Mimi is just waiting to pick them up. So that was my big sourdough container that I have my discard. I actually feed my sourdough only about 2 to 3 days a week. I pulled it out this morning, fed it this morning. We'll feed it again this evening, and we're going to make bread this weekend. And then I'll stick it back in the fridge for 3 to 5 days and do the whole process over again. So I don't have a ton of discard. I only have about 2 to 3 days of discard, but it's something that I knew I needed to do something with this weekend. So this is a great way to use it up. So I threw a half a cup of that discard into my mixer. And here I've just got whole milk that I've got 3/4 of a cup we're heating up in the microwave. Just for about 20 seconds. I want it to be warm, but not too hot. Okay, so I'm just going to throw the milk away, or put the milk away, and then I pulled out my rapid rise yeast. Now I know it has sourdough in it, but the sourdough is not active right now because it's waste or discard. So the recipe I had that I tweaked a little bit does actually come with yeast, and it gives it a really nice rise to the donut. So I'm going to go ahead and throw in 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast into my warm milk. Then we add a little sugar. Yeast needs sugar for it to really work. So that's how it kind of gets foamy and bubbly. It needs warmth and it needs sugar. It likes to eat and it likes some warmth. So we're going to do those 2 things, wait 4 to 5 minutes, and it'll get nice and bubbly. Meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and pull out my bulk container of bread flour. Now this flour is a flour that I buy from, it looks like I'm throwing my sugar in here, but my bread flour is my flour that I buy from Gordon Food Service. If you have a GFS in your area, it's a great pastry flour. So it's good for pizza. It is good for bread too, and also like donuts and cakes, and that's what I use it for. So I buy a 25-pound bag when I go over there. It's super cheap, and it actually will fill up 2 of those bulk containers, so 1 3/4. So it'll last Steve and I for quite a while, way over a year. But I use it for bread making. I mix it with my einkorn flour too, so it is one of my favorite things. So while the yeast is doing its thing, I went ahead and pulled out some butter, and you need a stick of butter in the microwave so it's melted. It takes about 1.5 minutes to melt that. And just like we all do in the kitchen, I started to heat that up, and then I realized that I really only needed 1 stick of butter. I put 2 sticks of butter in my bowl, so I pulled that out real quick to save the butter just in time so I could stick it back in the fridge and use it for another recipe. Saved by the bell. So here I'm just reviewing my recipe. Just found out that the girls are going to be even later than I thought tonight, so I'm really glad that I'm pulling together my recipe now. The one thing I love about having everything in stock and in bulk is that I have pretty much anything I want whenever I want. And I just keep a good inventory of that so that I know that I've got flour, sugar, brown sugar, powdered sugar, whatever it is that I need. Butter, I freeze my butter, so we always have we always have a lot of butter. I normally have about 8 or 10 pounds of butter in the freezer at any given time. So, but one of the things about that is that you have a grocery store in your own pantry. And so stocking up is not just really good for a rainy day. Well, it is a rainy day, but it's also good for a situation when there's an emergency as well. But it's great for just day-to-day cooking in your kitchen. Well, here I pulled out some farm fresh eggs that I had, and they apparently really did need to be washed off. So I don't wash my farm eggs off until they are ready to be used. If I wanted to keep them on the counter, I could. I do still refrigerate them, but I get my fresh eggs from a local farmer. I can't have a chicken coop here on my property, but I do purchase farm eggs from a local farmer. So I threw 2 eggs into my mix, and now we're going to start with the flour. So right now what I have in there is butter, my yeast mixture, and my sourdough starter is all in there. So we're gonna slowly add flour. I'm gonna add 1 cup of flour. Now the recipe calls for 3 1/4 cups of flour, but I hardly ever use that. It's normally typically around 3 cups. So you slowly just add a cup at a time until it's really good and incorporated. And I'm gonna add 3 full cups. Now I do not have my dough hook on here, just because I feel like my dough hook sometimes doesn't scrape the sides very well, but we'll put the dough hook on when it's time for kneading here in a bit and see how that works. So I ended up switching this out for my dough hook, and my dough hook, I don't know, sometimes I feel like my dough hook works well, and sometimes it's like there's too much dough in. You can see it's moving my mixer all around. So I ended up just pulling it all out and kneading it by hand, which is a good workout, by the way. So the kneading process takes 4 to 5 minutes. I did a good solid 4 minutes with my dough. Just continued to knead my dough back and forth. You can really feel the gluten form in the bread when you're doing this, or in the dough. It started to get pretty stiff there towards the end. So when we're all done with the kneading process, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that to an oiled bowl and cover it up and refrigerate it for a couple of hours and just let it rest. And normally what happens in the fridge is that it rises. So we'll come back here shortly and we'll work on the next step. Since the grandkids are coming over tonight, the granddaughters that is, I just really want to create memories when they come over, and I want them to remember their time with their papa and myself. They call me Mimi. In doing things that are kind of what my grandparents used to do. I remember when I was young, memories I have of cookies in a certain cookie jar with my grandmother, and how she always had pickles on the table when I came over. And I just want to have these memories for our granddaughters as well, teaching them how to live their life simply and the best that they can. So the girls came over, they're eating dinner right there, and one of them is doing some learning stuff on her tablet. But I went ahead and continued to work in the kitchen while they were finishing up so that they could help Mimi with the donuts. They're very excited. They like to bake every time they come over. We typically bake something. And this time I promised them that we would make donuts. So that's what we're working on, which I've started before they got here. But while I'm waiting on them, I went ahead and decided to feed my sourdough. So my sourdough is in the smaller container, my sourdough starter, and the big container I just took over to throw in the fridge is my discard. I feed my sourdough 2 times a day for about 3 days. I normally take it out on Friday and then put it away on Sunday evening. I add 100 grams of warm water here to really just a very little sourdough that is left in there. I don't really keep a lot in there. Most of what is in my container goes into my discard. And I mix the water in real good so it's nice and incorporated. And then I add an all-purpose bread flour to the sourdough starter until the next day. So you can do any type of flour really that you'd like. I found that hard red wheat is not a really good one to use, but the just a bread flour is really an all-purpose bread flour. And this is like a bread and pizza crust flour that I use. It's great for bread, but it's going to be good for donuts too. We're going to use the same thing for donuts. So just finishing up my sourdough here, and then once I incorporate the flour into the water and sourdough starter, I'll set that aside until tomorrow morning, and then it will be good until it normally lasts about 12 hours. I normally feed my sourdough between 8 and 12 hours apart. It really depends on what I have going on for the weekend, but super easy. As you can see, it does not take very long at all. So here I'm getting ready to make my icing before we actually throw the donuts in. I make that tub back there is, yes, it is a 5-gallon tub of powdered sugar. So I buy my powdered sugar. I think I bought the powdered sugar this time at GFS, but we've been making lots of baked goods with the girls coming over. I usually am not a baker unless it is for a certain event, but the girls love to bake so much. It keeps them busy, gives them something constructive to do, that we always try to do that. So we've got some powdered sugar, cream, and vanilla that we're putting together to make an icing. My icing ended up a little bit thicker this time. I think next time I'm going to either cook it over the stove so it's nice and warm, or thin it out a little bit, but the icing was fabulous. So you just put those things together in, I think it was 3/4 cup of cream. I threw a generous amount of vanilla because I really like vanilla, and 3 cups of powdered sugar. And then I took my my manual dough hook, and just mixed it together. Oh yes, and just a small amount of salt. I just threw a pinch of salt in there too as well. I forgot the recipe called for that. When I think of the memories that we're making together by cooking in the kitchen and just sitting there and sharing stories and talking about things that happen with their day. One of them went to a birthday party yesterday. The other one stayed home. They were both anxiously waiting for us to pick them up last night. I just really felt like this was just everything that I have waited for my whole life. So being with our grandkids is just really fabulous if you have not experienced that yet. But Hazel's about done eating her dinner, and we are going to get started here on making the actual donuts. So as I was sharing with Hazel, we threw some flour down on the countertop just so that our dough would not stick. I've recently purchased this new rolling pin, which I really love. It's all wood. My last one was marble, but I actually do really like this one a lot. It's easy to clean up, and it's easy for little hands and my hands as well. So we have let the dough sit in the refrigerator and rest. It did rise a little bit. It's a little firm, so the more we work with it, the better it kind of smooths out. But we rolled it out to about 1/2 inch. So the more I worked with it, really the easier it got. It was a little tough at first, and I had kind of forgotten that the last time I made these donuts that I let them sit out for about 5 minutes before I used the rolling pin. So that would be my suggestion next time. So I don't have a biscuit cutter or a donut cutter. I used to have a really cool antique donut cutter, and I don't have one. And so what I'm using here is a wide mouth ring for canning to cut our donut holes. Since this project, I've ordered myself a donut cutter, so the next time they come over, it's a lot easier. But we just cut these donuts in. I just cut round circles, and then I found a lid that we actually used for a juice jar to actually cut the whole of the donut. Really ended up being kind of tasky. It worked for the time being, but really the new donut cutter I purchased that's coming tomorrow from Amazon, thank goodness for Amazon, will have a better luck. So we tried to throw these in the air fryer, and I sprayed some oil in the air fryer and then stuck the donut in the air fryer for about 3 minutes. It cooked up quite nicely. Honestly, it puffed up just like a donut, but it was very dry. It didn't really it tasted more like bread, even after I put the icing on it. So we all tried it, didn't really like that. And so here in a short time here, I'll show you how we cook them in some tallow. Okay, so we're moving forward with using our wide mouth ring to cut our donuts. And Hazel is helping quite nicely. She really likes to do the donut holes. She'll see here shortly. But this was a fun little project for them. This is super kid friendly. This part's kid friendly. I would not let them actually be over there by the stove when we did the frying, but they were available for taste testing for sure, as well as Steve. So here we just took the leftover dough. I was going to roll it out, but the last time I did this, it actually got pretty stiff. So I decided that I was just going to cut these in we just ripped off some pieces, rolled them into balls. They did not roll into balls very well, so I kind of created them into Hazel rolled hers in balls. Meadow just watched, and I actually created more of a roll that kind of like I was making a loaf of sourdough bread. That's how I did mine to cook up mine. So those did cook up better than the kids's. The kids's looked more like a funnel cake when it went into the oil, which was fine too. But if you want something that looks more aesthetically pleasing for your guest, if it's for kids, they don't really care. It's fun for them. Okay, here I pulled out my iron skillet and threw some tallow in my iron skillet. If you do not know what tallow is, it is the fat around the vital organs of a cow. Mine, at least, is from the vital organs of a cow. I purchased beef tallow. My tallow was already rendered. I buy it a pound at a time for some cooking, but mostly I use it for skincare products that I make. But it comes in solid form. It's already been rendered down, does not have a beef smell to it. It's very pure, but it's great for cooking, has a lot of good nutrients in it, and it's just something else that's from the cow God created for us to eat and to use. And so we're just melting this tallow down, and I had half a pound left over from making some facial cream, and I probably used about a quarter of a pound here. I probably melted about a quarter of a pound down and then threw the rest of it in the fridge. So the tallow is heating up over a medium heat on the stove, and we continue to finish cutting our donut holes out of our circles that we had already cut. So pretty easy process, just could be easier if we had the right equipment. So we have that on order, and we will do that the next time we make donuts with Mimi and Papa. Hey guys, I just want to take a minute to break through here and tell you about our website, GullionHomestead.com, where we have a blogging community, and this recipe shortly will be on a blog post so you can make this yourself at home, but we would love for you to join us on that community. Again, it's GullionHomestead.com. We're also on Facebook and YouTube. So I did feel like the temperature was still a little bit high, so I turned it down to like between low and medium. That oil just gets hot pretty quickly. So got the donut holes out, and now we're going to start with the donuts. And just a side note, I really felt like the donuts turned out way better than the donut holes. Maybe it's because there was more dough there, so they didn't feel like they overcooked as much as the donut holes. So just cook them on either side until they're lightly brown. You can also do this in another type of oil. I probably would not do this in coconut oil unless you're good on the heat point, because coconut oil can go rancid if it gets too hot. But absolutely could do this with olive oil, which is what I did the last time I made this. I just decided to use the tallow. I had it in the fridge, and I really wanted to play around with using tallow in cooking as well. Okay, so I ended up having to throw the icing that I made in the microwave because it was just super thick and was not really working very well with icing my donuts. The last time I made these donuts, I decided not to make the icing and just cover it in powdered sugar. And let me tell you, that was fantastic as well, because if you just powder them when they come out of the oil and then you just throw them right in the powdered sugar, it's almost like they've got an icing on them and they're not near as messy. So I might consider doing that again next time, but this time I just heated up the icing that I made, threw my donuts in there, and then just kind of tossed them around until they were nicely coated.